Hello, hello, soulful seekers. Welcome back to Soul Rain. You know, I've got a brand new guest for you. Today we have Bonnie Poirier, and she's an incredible spirit. You're going to love and adore her as I do as we get to know her today. Bonnie, I'm trying to think about where you and I met, and I can't recall if it was Nat or Hypnothoughts.
I want to say it's through
I know.
NAF. hmm
I think it was too.
I want to say it's
And
through NAF, and it's
I know we met
hmm
online before we met in person.
hmm
Yeah.
hmm that is correct.
And NAF is pretty good. They've got some pretty good conferences. And we both present, we both speak. And so that's how we ended up bumping into each other. But you also attend Heartland quite a bit too.
I enjoy Heartland. What I
Yeah.
like about Heartland is that they offer um, different tracks. So if you want to go into a clinical workshop and then follow it up with a past life regression workshop, it's right there. So they have these different tracks, and it seems to be a little more laid back, I think. And I just enjoy going there because um, they do offer that show, that the hypnosis show where you can go in there. So there's just so much energy going on. It's just really vibrant, and it's not huge. It's really manageable, so you're not overwhelmed by hundreds and hundreds of people. So I find that Heartland is really good for folks who it may be their first conference, or maybe they're a little bit older and they're looking for something a little more laid back. But Heartland is really a good place for expression as well as education.
And then I did find that when I attended, there was a little bit more of a spiritual kind of tapped in focus there because William and all of the ministry work that he does.
Exactly. Yes. Yes. And I do appreciate that as well because, like you, I do a lot of spiritual hypnotherapy work and working with grief, working with dying. Plus, I do, intuition development, past life regressions. It all is under the same umbrella.
And then you do ministry work as well. Yeah.
Yes. Yes, I do. Yes, I do. I am affiliated with Unity Church. I do small spiritual groups,
Yeah.
and some of them are online, some of them are in person, but they keep me busy. But I do quite a bit of small spiritual group work.
And so, what came first, the ministry work or the hypnotherapy? How did that whole journey kind of begin for you?
Boy, that's a good question. I was in seminary with a congregational church, and I was experiencing tremendous anxiety to the point of panic. And one day we were in a classroom situation where we were doing hands-on healing, Reiki. We were doing Reiki, and I thought I was being really calm, and no one would notice my anxiety. So we get through the first day, and it was a beautiful day. The next day, a lady comes and she sits down by me, and she hands me a brochure. And that brochure was for a gentleman who did hypnotherapy. So I looked at this brochure, and there was a phone number on it. Now, mind you, this is like 34 years ago. So I contacted this gentleman, and he was out in the middle of nowhere in Louisiana. We're talking about swamps and alligators. So I knock on the door, and this little old lady opens the door, and she says, "Come on in, come on in." And she directs me to a side room. And there was this little old man standing there. And he said, "Come on in, you're in the right place." So I sat down, and we had a bit of a conversation. I explained to him why I was there. and we had my very first hypnotherapy session. I had no idea what to expect. So I got through that session, and before I left, I scheduled another session. So I go back to the second session, and it was a little better than the first session. So I'm in that second session, and I said, I think I need one more session. So I made that appointment. Between the second and third session, I had something come up in my life that would have thrown me into a full blown panic. And I responded with ease, comfort, and clarity of mind. And I realized, aha, there is something going on, and it's something really good. So when we made that third session, when I went for that appointment, that's what I told him, that I explained to him what happened and how I responded. And at the end of that third session, I said, I have to learn this. Whatever you were doing, I have to learn. And I did. So I went through a year-long program with St. John's University, and I became a certified clinical hypnotherapist. About this time, so I'm doing the two things simultaneously. About this time, I had to go into my clinical pastoral education. Some people call it clinical pastoral experience. It's the CPE. And they put me in a battered women's shelter, which I really was thriving. But then I got notification that I had to go help co-lead a grief group because one of the leaders had become ill, and I needed to go in with that. So that's how I got into grief group. At this point, I had had enough hypnotherapy training, I'd been certified, that I was able to begin working with people with grief. So, which came first, the chicken or the egg? It was kind of a
Yeah.
simultaneous thing that I was able to do the clinical work with being a pastor, and the clinical work in finishing up my hypnotherapy training.
It's fun how sometimes spirit doesn't really give you any deviations, or this is your plan, this is how you're going to move forward, and these are going to be, two pillars of what you're going to be. And if you thought you had a choice in that, you
Exactly.
don't.
You don't. Was it a lot of
I
work?
love
Was it
that.
really
Yeah.
stressful? You betcha. But I got to tell you, if I had not had that
Yeah.
hypnotherapy under my belt, I don't know if I would have finished. I don't know if I would have finished seminary. I truly don't. It is what got me through because
Yeah.
I
I mean,
had
my goodness.
those tools and those skills. Hmm.
Yeah. I mean, my goodness. It doesn't
That I'll
matter
I'll be
if
forever
it was
grateful.
the women's
Yes.
shelter or the
Hmm.
grief. You're seeing people on their hardest days when they're dealing with the most difficult things they've ever been through. What are some of the big aha moments you
Exactly.
learned when going through that?
I want to say some of the bigger things was letting go of my own judgments, because I can remember sitting, and this is a large grief group that had been meeting for years, and we met in the basement. And here in Southeast Louisiana, we really don't have basements. But this particular building was built up, and we had a basement. And I can remember sitting in this circle and seeing each individual that was there.
Mm.
And it wasn't that I was seeing them as individuals. It was like I was able to have that soul to soul connection. They were all there because obviously they were grieving, but they were there, and they were fully exposing the most vulnerable parts of themselves. They had loved ones who would tell them, "Oh, it's time to just get over it. It's time to move on. Haven't you been grieving long enough? And why do you need to go to someone to help you deal with this. So, my biggest aha was letting go of my own judgments, my own um, vulnerabilities were becoming exposed as well. And through that, there, there was not only healing for the people that I was helping to guide, but I was also experiencing my own healing with the grief that I had not dealt with in my own life.
Why do you think that was? That was also kind of very cathartic for you?
I think that that's a good question. I think that the reason why it was so cathartic for me is the witnessing, being the witness for these people. And as I'm doing my best to help guide them through these moments of great inner pain and inner turmoil, it was helping to bring out things within myself that I had not dealt with. So as I'm listening to their conversations, their concerns, their fears, the mysteries of their souls, I was also bringing forth within my own beingness, if you will, the mysteries, the fears, the vulnerabilities of my own soul.
Hmm. There really is something to be said about emotion and vibration and what happens when a group of people comes together. And I think it's proven so many places over and over again. I know I've seen it within mediumship that when we have more mediums, the better, stronger connection we're able to hold for a longer period of time. But there you are in grief work doing the same thing. Isn't it just fascinating the way when we
Exactly.
gather together, the impact we can make?
And I do want to say something about psychic mediums and grief. Over the
Mhm.
years, I
Mhm.
have worked with people who have survived some of the most horrendous tragedies,
Mhm.
um, murders,
Mhm.
suicides, several parents who they have lost their children. Their children are missing. And when they have gone to visit a psychic medium, they are able to get some truths that and some connections that have been so profoundly healing. For instance, when
Yeah.
this is some years ago, we had a serial killer in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and I had a mom come to me. And the way that they found out that their daughter had been murdered was literally a special report on TV. They broke into her soap opera, the news, and they said, "We're live here on this scene." And when they panned back away from the house, she recognized her daughter's house. And that's how she found out that
Oh
her
my
daughter
God.
had been murdered. She came to me for grief. And when as we are working, she said, "You know, there," and this is the first time that I had had someone go see a psychic medium. She said, "I am thinking about seeing a
Mhm.
medium outside of Lafayette, Louisiana, a Cajun medium." And I said, I think that would be very beneficial for you. The words just came out of my mouth. I think that would be beneficial for you. This medium was able to immediately connect with her daughter. This medium provided information for her that the news and the police had not provided for her, like the entry into her home, words said to her, things like that. So the thing that provided the most healing for her is that she told her mom, I was scared, but I felt no pain. She let her mom know that, yes, I was scared, but I prayed through this, God, please send your mercy. And she told her mom over and over again, I was scared, but I felt no pain. And once this was over, once my fear was lifted, I was in the arms, and she named several loved ones. I was in their arms immediately. It provided such healing for her that I don't think any psychotherapy could have ever provided for her.
I'm incredibly biased because if we're talking chicken and egg, mediumship was first for me. And then later hypnotherapy happened, and then the two kind of came and melded together. And so I've seen a lot of those clients. And now, rather than do a reading, which I think readings are still immensely valuable, I think it is, especially where there's grief involved. And I did want to talk about that as we explore further. It's because grief is one of the few things that can block mediumship. And so sometimes if a person is really deep in grief, they can't work with me in hypnosis yet. It's too hard, it's too much. So they can just go and get a reading in that point, and a reading can be immensely validating. It can be a pathway to them seeing out of their own perspective, because how often is it we're all guilty of this? We think that our loved one is feeling a certain way, and so we kind of mind read the situation of, oh, they must be angry at me, they must feel like I've let them down. No, your loved one doesn't feel that at all. You feel that. Your loved one just loves you, and they have their own perspective and feelings, so it is immensely valuable for that reason. Yeah.
One of the things that I will ask people to go to mediums for is when they come to me with hearts filled with regret. If they are
Mm-hmm.
feeling regret, it's really hard to penetrate through that. We can do all of the hypnotherapy that we can do. We can do all of the talk therapy that we can do. But once they can hear it from their loved ones, that there is no need to have that regret. And it just
Yeah.
it's like a glass shatters, and you're fully exposing that love that that person has for you, because regret places this shield. And once that shield
Yeah.
is eliminated, then you can begin working on the work of grief. But it's regret that
Yes.
I will always, always send someone, please go see a medium, because it is through that medium that you're able to get down to the bottom of that thought of regret. And people will hold on to regret for decades, if not a full lifetime.
It's almost like they're walking through the world with horse blinders on, and they really can't see anything outside of it. As you were talking about that, I was thinking about this one
That's
client that I had. Oh goodness, it must be about 3 years ago now. And she came in because she saw me at a psychic fair, and I did a brief reading for her, and I was able to pick up on her son without prompting. And so she then wanted to do a little bit more work, and so she came to see me for a one-on-one hypnotherapy where I made her the medium, and I just stepped back and held space. And her son had died really tragically in a house fire, and he was just a teen. And so she had so much guilt, so much regret, so much if I had only. And so for him to come forward and for her to see his face and feel what he was feeling was just so cathartic, for him to say, that was an exit point for me. You weren't meant to do anything. And the only thing you're doing now is feeling bad. And that's not what I want for you. I just want you to feel the
Mhm.
love that I have for you.
Yes, yes. There is a lady that I've been working with in a grief support group. She's been coming to me, I guess about 18 months now.
Yeah.
And within the last couple of months, she has started seeing someone who does Reiki. And This person who has been providing the Reiki for her tapped her one day on the shoulder during a session, tapped her on the shoulder and said, I'm getting these words. And the words are, date him. And this Reiki master had no idea. What does that mean? Tap on his shoulder, say these words, date him. Well, she goes to a medium the following week. The medium tells her, honey, your husband has been trying to tell you for months and months and months. That fellow that you see at the coffee shop
Yeah.
every morning, date him. And she said, are you serious? This man is,
Yeah.
and she starts listing, he's old, he is this and this and this. And she said, how can I date him? Well, the psychic medium said, oh, honey, you're the same age as him. And that's when the coffee conversations started transforming. They're now dating. They're a hot couple. They're both in their late 70s, and they hold each other's hands. They live in the same neighborhood. The coffee shop is on the corner. They walk around and they're holding hands. They're the cutest couple. But if it had not been for that person doing Reiki with her, and the thing is, if that Reiki person had thought about it and thought, oh, this is ridiculous. How can I possibly tap this person on a shoulder in the middle of a session and say, date him, not realizing that she has just transformed this lady's life.
And there are Reiki purists out there who only want to stick to the basics. And unfortunately, what a missed opportunity that would have been had they not. I had done volunteer work with a lady who considered herself to be just that, a Reiki purist, and no intuitive messages whatsoever. And I was a budding medium. There was like, oh, you got to be kidding me. That's like asking me not to speak for 3 hours. I don't know if that's going to work. But yeah, and we never know. I think that is the most vulnerable part of mediumship, is that courage, that bravery to give the message without knowing where it's going to go. Yeah.
And you said it right there. It's allowing, because I do Reiki. It's allowing part of us to step aside and allow that soul to meet that other soul. And once we're able to allow that to happen and we step aside, most of the time miracles happen.
I will say Reiki in itself is very special. It really is the door opener. My dear friend, our common friend, Nora Noble, will often talk about how she uses Reiki as an induction. She's got the Noble protocol that she works with, and it's that blend of Reiki and hypnosis. And so anytime we're going into those deeper states, I don't care what you call it. You can call it hypnotherapy, you can call it mediumship, but we're going into those deeper levels of consciousness, and that's where the beautiful things really start to organically happen and unfold, and healing happens. But it sounds like you get similar results when you're working with people.
And I
with
tell
grief.
you, that's...
So I know that you run the grief group. We've got a bit of lag between us. I think it's on my end. But I know you run the grief group. I'd love to hear more about that.
Okay. And this is something that hypnotherapists who are trained in hypnotherapy, they can do this. The most important thing, and you cannot get this from a book, is that you have to have compassion. If you have a little bit of compassion, you can do this. Now, I am trained on a pastoral level. I am trained in grief, death and dying and grief. The grief group that I run, it lasts about an hour and a half. We do this at a center. Now, the work that I do with hypnotherapy is in person. I do have an office. I see people that come into my office, but this grief group is at another center with a larger room. We begin with meditation, and in that meditation, we we allow ourselves to sit for a moment with our loved ones. And sometimes when people come in, they are not just grieving one person, they may be grieving multiple people. It could be parents, a spouse, a child, but it could be multiple people. And we always have a topic. So once the meditation has concluded, we do have a topic of discussion. It could be setting up altars to remember. It could be setting up other things within their homes, within their lives. And I'll talk about that in just a moment. And so we have this discussion regarding that topic for that particular month. And then we end with another meditation that helps set them into their lives, grounding so they move forward. So I just want to talk about we one month we had a lady that was in, and she loved to cook. She was one of these people, she just loved to cook. And when her husband was in his lengthy dying process, people brought her food. People were kind, they brought her food. Well, she lost her husband. Her husband did pass. She did start coming to the grief group. And one evening, she shared with us that she missed cooking. She missed eating at the dining room table with her husband because they would sit together in the evenings. They would light a candle. They would have their nice dinner, have a couple of glasses of wine. It was a nice way to end their evenings. But her husband got sick. He went through his dying process. She had not been cooking. She hadn't eaten at her dining room table in almost a year. So one day, the grief group said, hey, what if we got groceries, brought them to your house, and you cook for us? We'll have the grief group at your house. And her face lit up. I mean, she was just so excited about this. Yes, come on over. So we all got the groceries. We had a salad and salmon and veggies and all of this stuff. Of course we had wine. And we sat down and we ate dinner at her table. That was the most healing thing for her. And many times when people are going through their grief experiences, one of the things that we have to be mindful of is that, yes, we are taking care of these people when we bring them food and other things, but we need to help bring them back into the things they love, because this woman loved cooking for people. And she loved sitting around her dining room table and watching other people enjoy their meals. And the healing that happened is indescribable. So as we are going, through this work, it's not just working with grief with hypnotherapy or with mediumship or with Reiki. It's paying attention to what some of the needs are that are missing from this person's life and how they can get those things that gave them that life affirming things that they had been missing, just bringing it back into their lives.
And in that moment, they changed. They changed that memory, that recall that was happening every time she looked at her table, because they made a new memory. She could look at it
Mm-hmm.
and remember and love, and not, oh, this was the last time he sat there with me.
Yes. Yes.
That's so
Mm-hmm.
beautiful.
When we are working with people in grief, we are doing work that is very spiritual. We are working clinical hypnotherapy can work with a person's physical body, helping with pain, um, helping with getting off of cigarettes, weight reduction, whatever it may be. When we're working in spiritual hypnotherapy, we are working with that person's soul. And when we are working with people who are in grief, that is exactly what we are doing. And I have seen people come in who their cup, their soul is empty. And, and I just saw you drink, from your cup. We can't drink from an empty cup. But once we start filling that cup, their spirit, their soul, I see this transformation that happens with them. Even their own skin color changes because many times, and you've probably seen it in your own work, people will come to you and they've lost so much of themselves that even their skin tone, they have this pallor. It's not only just the expressions in their faces, but it affects them physically in all ways as well. They may not be taking such good care of themselves, may not be sleeping very well. But once we start working with this, we see them eating better, sleeping better. The color is coming back into their cheeks. When they smile, it's a true, authentic smile. And the beauty in this, just to be a witness to this, I can't even describe the honor that it is to be a part of this.
I'm glad that you're talking about some of the telltale signs because in various parts of my life, and grief doesn't require death to happen, there have been times where I've not
Right.
identified, oh, I'm grieving. And it can be kind of insidious. And people will be going through life and they're like, what is going on with me? I don't know what my problem is. And sometimes it can be kind of sneaky and it can sneak up on you. And I think they say that, don't they? Grief sneaks up on you. Do you have any insight onto why is it sometimes we don't realize that we're grieving and we don't do it? We don't acknowledge or know that that's what we need.
That is a fabulous question. And I'm so glad that you brought that up because so many people who have gone through tragedies, earthquakes, fires. We live here in Southeast Louisiana and we have hurricanes that have just destroyed our properties, job losses. It could be the death of a dream. It could be the death of a relationship, whatever that it doesn't have to be a loving relationship. It can be a friendship. Um, but there are things that people will not realize that they are grieving. They may be going through life, just bumping along through life. They may find themselves getting agitated at the least little things. They may find that their appetite has changed. They may find that they're eating more or not eating at all. They may not realize that their sleep patterns have changed. Many times, when people realize that they're grieving, it comes when there is like a diagnosis, or it may come when they bump up against something and things just begin to fall apart before they can begin putting themselves back together. For instance, we had a lady who was in her 60s who she and her husband had adopted a dog from the local pound. And they loved this dog. It was just the three of them. They took little vacations together. It was like a little Chihuahua dog. And one day, her husband died suddenly. And she wasn't expecting it, but she was dealing with it okay. I mean, she was, going through life. She was still attending her church group. She was still attending, different things, going places, her exercise class and things like that. Then all of a sudden, her dog got sick and had to be humanely euthanized.
God.
And she couldn't handle it. And she came to this grief group kind of screaming, how can it be that my husband died? We were together since we were teenagers. How can it be my husband dies and I'm able to carry on with my life, but our dog dies and I can't get myself out of bed most mornings? Why is this? It's grief. It's unresolved grief. So she said, I need help now. What do I do right now? What can I do to start working through this? And I said, well, you're not going to like to hear this, but I want you to go back to that shelter and I want you to get a foster dog. I want you to get the most grieving dog, the dog that needs the most help in this moment, the dog that is grieving. You're going to see it because you're grieving yourself. I want you to get that dog. I don't want you to get a young dog. I want you to get an older dog. And she said, all right, I'll do it. So she did. She went back to the Humane Society. She got herself an older dog, brought it home, and all that afternoon and night, they stared at each other. They were both so confused. So they got through the evening, went to bed, dog had its own little pillow by the bed, woke up the next morning, and she took the dog for a walk. Came back, fed the dog. And then later on, she had to take the dog out again. And that evening, she fed the dog and it went for another walk. And as the days are going by, she's developing a routine with this dog. That's the biggest thing that was missing. She did not know what to do next because the dog kept her within a routine that she and her husband had established. It just took something so simple as that to get her back on the road to recovery and to herself again.
Being an owner of 3 dogs, I'm incredibly biased. I know you're incredibly biased too. You probably got one under your feet just like I do. But there's a reason it's
Right
dog and it's
behind me.
God spelled backwards. And the thing is, we don't always look at it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And we don't always look at it, but they are one of the biggest sources of unconditional love. And that moment she lost that little chihuahua, that was possibly one of the last big inputs of love in her life. So she didn't feel the absence of the
Yes.
husband as big
Yes.
as maybe it was because she had this little body with fur that was just beaming everything in it at her, and then it was gone. Yeah, I think that element
Exactly.
of grief is one we don't talk about. It's, oh, how are you still moving forward and loving them? And that was actually the homework I gave to that client that I had who lost her son in the fire. Of, okay, you still have a lot of love to give. How are you moving that? How are you stopping that from stagnating in your body? And that's when she had a bit of homework. And so we'd agreed that she would have a photo, and every day she would look into his eyes in the photo and she would have a conversation with him. And then she'd go out and do things in the community. But I think that's a huge thing with grief. It's like they lose purpose. They lose a reason for being and giving and doing love. And they need that again.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. I will tell you this. There are several. When it comes to grief work, there are several different models that people can study, and the model that I follow, that I believe works well with hypnotherapists, it's called the continuing bonds theory. And what this does is we don't let go of the person who has passed. We continue with them in our lives. And what you did pretty much follows that model of continuing bonds theory. We're continuing that bond with that person. And for some people, that is an everyday, all day occurrence because our loved ones are not separated from us. Our loved ones are with us all the time. And once we have that connection, like you having the picture in every room and she can look in those eyes and speak with her son, that is part of that. And they may not feel that person, but they can certainly sense them through that photo. So the continuing bonds theory does follow along that logic, is that we're not letting go of that person. We are continuing on and we are elevating that love into that spiritual form. We can't see them, we can't touch them, but we can certainly have that relationship. And I like to, whenever I'm working with someone with this, I always ask them because they said, I can't touch them, I can't see them, I can't hug them. If they have a belief system where they have a prayer life or a meditation life, if they have any angel statues in their homes, if they believe in angels, which I do, if they have any type of a relationship with God, Jesus, Buddha, the saints, whomever it may be that they call upon in times of need, they're able to have that relationship that sustains them. And as a result, they're able to continue on with that relationship. And it can be deeper and it can be stronger at that soul level.
Yeah. As you're talking about that, I've had personal experience with that. I was estranged from my biological father when he passed. Uh, that's a whole story we're not going to get into. I think I've talked about it on here before. He passed, and I was having a moment with mediumship where I wasn't inclined to do it, and I didn't want to be part of it. And he just kind of came in and validated of, oh yeah, you're doing this. And so I did actually get to have a relationship with him. And now when I train mediums, he's one of the first spirits to come in. So I don't give away too many details on the podcast because often when I'm training a student, he's one of the first ones to show up. And so now I still have that working bond with him that I didn't have in life. And so it doesn't have to go away. But I think it's an important thing, and we don't talk about it as a society. We don't make it a regular known practice until we're in these situations and we're all of a sudden drowning in grief.
Yes, that is something that we can visualize. When people say that they are drowning in grief, and that is a term, that's exactly what many feel. They feel like they can't breathe. They feel like they are covered in grief and that it's hard for them to swim out of it. They feel the weight. Many times I will have people tell me that it's hard to put one foot in front of the other. The lady that I was talking about who said, it's hard for me to get out of bed in the morning. It literally is physically difficult for her to take the blankets off and get her body out of that bed. So that term drowning in grief is a true term. And that is probably one of the best descriptions for many people who are experiencing grief. It feels like you're drowning without water, but within grief itself.
Yeah. So, as someone
Now,
who
one thing
works
I
with
can say
grief, because
is,
of how,
mhm,
go ahead, sorry, lag.
okay, I just wanted to share that, for people of faith, death can be understood as one movement or one form into another. And for those people, yes, the physical body may have reached its natural conclusion, but the soul continues its journey. And in my work, whether it's pastoral or hypnotherapy or a combination of the two, I often remind people that love itself is evidence that our lives are connected to something eternal. And love does not disappear simply because a body is no longer with us. The relationships that we form are with us forever. And those connections stay with us and become a part of our spiritual story. So when we think about people in spirit, they are on that side of us that want to see us succeed in all aspects. They are there with us when we are experiencing fear. They're with us whenever we're experiencing confusion. They're with us always. That connection is always there. So that connection stays with us eternally. And when we are talking about hypnotherapy and mediumship, we are able to make those, because I'm not a medium, but I do work with mediums. And when we are able to make that connection, it becomes something that words can't describe because it hits us right here, right in our heart chakra. And it opens, and you can see it. The aha, I'm okay. You're with me. And the love that we have is that presence. Sometimes we don't need to have the perfect words. Sometimes we don't need to have the perfect answers. Sometimes simply being there is enough.
Mhm.
And for you to have the skills as a medium, as a hypnotherapist, the healing is immeasurable. And you're doing God's work. Let's face it, you, Amanda Dodd, you're doing God's work. This is what God sent you to do. And wherever you go, whoever you reach, you are reaching them on such a sacred, beloved level that I honor that. And I appreciate people who are able to do the mediumship with the hypnotherapy. And you do energy work. I mean, when we talk about the trifecta of healing, that's it. So when we talk about who can do this work, if you have a bit of compassion within you, Lord of mercy, you can just open everything up. Presence is enough. And when someone, whether you're a hypnotherapist, whatever your work may be, your primary modality, sometimes just sitting with them and listening to them is enough.
I think for me, it's metaphysics. It's knowing that I don't have to say anything, I don't have to do anything. I can just bring the vibration of unconditional love from source, which is most mediums, if they've done their work, they embody that on a regular basis without having to try anymore. And I think that when we experience grief, we're separated from that. There's that element of soul loss, and you described it with the pale skin and the bad self care, and they've lost part of their soul. They just haven't identified it. So I wondered about that. I wondered,
Right.
do you do soul retrieval sometimes in the processes? I know you do in terms of, because you restored that woman's soul that day when you went to dinner at her house and gave her that opportunity to be in that expression of love and cooking for people. But I wondered if you do it within hypnotherapy as well, or meditation.
I do. And I'm glad that you brought that up. If people are going to do grief work and they're more metaphysically inclined, I do recommend that people have that in their backpack of resources. Soul retrieval. It is quick, it is restorative, and it can help save so much pain and so much grief. So when we look at the realm of hypnotherapy, hypnotherapy can be very gentle. It can be a deeply relaxing process because as hypnotherapists, we are working in helping to calm the nervous system. When people come to us for hypnosis, so many times their central nervous system is so scattered and frayed. And helping to rein that in with guiding them in an induction, helping that nervous system calm, we can access deeper levels of their mind. So that can be a very gentle and deeply relaxing experience because when someone is grieving, their mind may be filled with racing thoughts, unresolved memories, guilt, emotional pain, regret. But as hypnotherapists, through that guided relaxation, through that therapeutic imagery, we're able to help people process those emotions in a safe and supportive way. So, combining this spiritual care, for me, the spiritual care does involve prayer, it does involve reflection and compassionate conversation because I am a hypnotherapist, but first and foremost, I am a spiritual director. So that compassionate conversation, that reflective listening, is a part of the tools that I use in creating space for healing. So it's not going to erase the grief like a pencil erases a mistake, but it transforms the grief so that it lives within us. It's a part of us. It's part of our DNA, if you will. But it helps us find the most profound discoveries. Um, and grief can lead into becoming a pathway to deeper meaning within life. And loss changes us.
Yeah.
You had mentioned that before. It doesn't necessarily have to be someone who has died. It can be a multitude of different things, but loss changes us. And while we never choose, the pain of losing someone that we love, many people eventually find that grief opens their hearts in new ways, ways that they never ever thought that would be part of their beingness. It can deepen compassion. It can help us find value in relationships more deeply. It can inspire us to live more intentionally. So over time, grief becomes less about the moment of loss and more about carrying forward that love and the lessons the person is giving us and gave us. So the love remains part of who we are. So that love that was once called grief is a part of us. And as a result, we carry this out to every person we meet. It could be a stranger that we say good morning to. That good morning is not without meaning. We truly wish them the best morning possible. So, one of the things that I do know about grief, it transforms us, and it can transform us in the most profound positive ways. It can provide lessons that none of us ask for. None of us ask to have grief. None of us ask for tragedies, but it does happen to us and it happens for us. So when we are working with
Yeah.
grief, we're not only helping others transform their lives, but boy, howdy, it's going to help transform our lives as well. Because I am not that person that I was 34 years ago when I first started this journey. And I can bet a dollar to a donut that your life is not the same that it was when you first started in this journey. It changes us as well.
Yeah, no, my life isn't the same as it was last week. I don't even recognize the person that I've been.
Well,
Yeah.
there is healing in community. There is healing in our faith. There is healing in
Mhm.
compassionate conversation. And there is healing in allowing ourselves the grace to move through loss. And sometimes that loss happens very rapidly, and sometimes it happens at a slower pace. Love is the beginning of grief, but love is also what helps guide us toward healing.
Yeah. I can see that. When I think about that client that lost her son in that fire, she did actually go on to make a foundation in his name that provides education. I want to say around fire safety. So she did take that and channel it into something that then the whole community around her is able to benefit from. So as you were talking about all of that, I started to like kind of draw comparisons inside of, wow, I've never put together, but grief is its own form of a dark night of the soul. Not every dark night of the soul has grief. A lot, but a lot can. They kind of move the same way, don't they?
Yes, and grief can be the darkest night of the soul. But when you get through that extreme darkness, the light that you step
Yeah.
into is the most vibrant, radiant, beautiful light that you could ever experience. If we
Mhm.
could talk for a moment
Yeah,
about more about
absolutely.
hypnotherapy and grief support. Hypnotherapy can help us address deeper emotional responses connected to grief. I know people that work with scripts, and I know people who use scripts as guides, and people who do not use scripts. They just take notes, and when they go into their session, that's what they use. But hypnotherapy, if it can do just a few of these things, we're going to find the inner doors to our souls just bursting wide open. If we can help a person calm their nervous system, because when we are in the deepest part of grief, our nervous system is exploding with energy. If we can help them process unresolved emotions, that may be doing a little regression therapy. It may even be doing some past life regressions. Believe it or not, there is a connection between past life regressions and doing grief work of today. Hypnotherapy
Yeah.
helps reduce the anxiety, and as a result, you're going to have people sleeping better. And when you are not getting good sleep, your mind can play the most amazing tricks on you. Your thinking isn't clear. There are things that can be blown out of proportion. Your mind needs that reset. So, with hypnotherapy, we're able to help with that anxiety and those sleep disturbances. But the really beautiful thing about hypnotherapy is that we are able to help them create beautiful, peaceful mental imagery. Because when we're grieving, our minds are creating all sorts of scenarios. And sometimes it's that projector, the we can get stuck on a single frame in the film of our lives. So with hypnotherapy, we're able to create peaceful mental imagery that we can bring with us because we're always 24 hours a day. We are within our own thoughts, whether we're speaking with another are sitting down with a dog by our lap. We're constantly thinking. And I just want to say one of the most beautiful things that we can do as hypnotherapists is we can facilitate symbolic closure. And there are so many people out there who are dealing with they didn't get a chance to say goodbye. To have that
Mhm.
symbolic closure is probably one of the most profound things that we can do as hypnotherapists. Hypnotherapy is not used to
Yeah.
remove grief. We never want to remove grief, but rather we as hypnotherapists, we can help people process grief in supportive and compassionate ways. If we can help people with closure, if we can help people manage their thoughts, if we can help people who are looking to find meaning and comfort, we can do that. And it's so spiritually healing. And some of the components that we already use, like prayer and meditation and reflection of life and legacy. And you were talking about your friend, your client who created a foundation. That is one of the things that we can do. People who are grieving is creating that legacy. Other people may not know that person, but they sure are benefiting from that legacy. One of the things that we have here in my hometown is we have parents who they have they lost their daughter to brain cancer. Her daughter had created um, a life for herself as a track runner. That's how she got into college. She was on a scholarship and she came home during a Christmas break and they were concerned because she had headaches. Turned out she had cancer and within months she died. Well, these parents created a foundation. They created a running club. And the money that they gather from this running club and from these races and marathons goes to cancer, brain cancer research. The way that she came up with this, and when I say she, the mom, the way the mom came up with this is she was sitting in church by herself in her own grief. And within her mind was laid out step by step in creating this legacy. So, as hypnotherapists, we can help with that.
Yeah.
We can help them create rituals of remembrance. And that is something that
Mhm.
we've already, talked about those rituals of remembrance. But as hypnotherapists, we can easily incorporate this beautiful work of grief that is profound for our clients, but it is also of meaning for ourselves.
It's fun. The languaging of it all. A medium would say sitting in spirit. Someone doing prayer work would say connecting with God. A hypnotist would say, "Oh, she went into
Mhm.
trance."
It's
At the end of the day, the language doesn't matter.
it's
We're all,
all the
we're all
same.
doing the same thing.
Yeah, it's all the same. It's all the same. Grief support
Um,
today often
I
combines
wanted
several
to I wanted to
approaches.
ask.
Um, yeah,
Yeah, go ahead, continue.
okay. Grief support today, whatever method we use, whether it's through mediumship, hypnosis, grief support groups, Reiki, whatever it is, even counseling and psychotherapy, grief support today often combines several approaches. And some frameworks focus on emotional stages, others focus on tasks people work through, and some focus on rebuilding meaning after loss. What they all have in common is understanding that grief is not something we fix. It's something we learn to move through with compassion. And I dare say that hypnotherapists, mediums, Reiki practitioners, we have it within us. We come from that place of compassion. We all know that this is not something we fix. It's not something that we take a screwdriver to and tightening a screw down so it becomes more supportive. We have the ways to create that sacred continuum for grief support, no matter what our modalities may be. It's that compassionate framework that offers the healing through love, through presence, and through that spiritual connection. And you're right, the wording is different, whether we're sitting in spirit, whether we're connecting with God, or whether whatever words we may use, it is creating that presence through that spiritual connection. And this helps us recognize that grief is not the end of the relationship with the person that we have lost. Instead, this continues in ways that our heart learns to live with, living with that loss. It could be, like I said, through pastoral care, hypnotherapy, spiritual reflection, even just gentle grief support. It helps the individuals move through the grief while maintaining a meaningful connection with their loved one. That is what I do. That is the work that I do, that continuing bonds theory, is I don't want them to let go of that person. I want them to create a more deeply held bond with them. That is where I see the most profound healing, is continuing that bond. Because that person, when you're in love with someone, when you are in that deep, loving relationship, it's not just that physical connection. You are connected soul to soul. It is as if we have exchanged atoms and cells and molecules with each other within our soul. So when that body dies, that connection is still there. We're still holding on to the atoms and the molecules of their soul. And it's taking that and moving
Trying to
forward
remember.
with it.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember, it was a study, and I'm trying to remember the exact metrics that they had. I'm going to botch this, so don't take this word for word. But it's talking about when we love someone, our brain is constantly monitoring the energy in their heart. And that's what we do when and I don't know how many feet of proximity it was, but so biologically, physically, we feel that loss as well. Because then all of a sudden you're not tracking that other
Yes, we do.
heart vibration change within your own brainwaves. Yeah.
Exactly. And I will tell you this, and you've seen memes, you've probably done some research on this. When we are in a loving relationship with someone, whether it's our spouse or our children, parents, whatever, there is so much research done with a hug. When we hug that person, we literally exchange vibrational energy that becomes a part of us forever. And I forget how long the hugs need to be, but those hugs help build our immunity. Their hugs are good for us. So when we lose that person physically, we're still attached to them emotionally and spiritually.
I like that you referenced that. That is so important. I, for one, am incredibly needy. I let my spouse know that I have a hug quota. If he is gone on tour, on leave because he's military, I let him know that he's going to have to make up. But that's the other reason I have dogs. And then I wanted to comment on, so there is, this is the true powerful thing for me with the work that you do and the work that I sometimes venture into. While grief work is not something I specialize in anymore, I'm pivoting off into narcissistic abuse recovery. That's something that people on this podcast have been watching me do for a few months now. When I was working a little more predominantly with that, one thing I found for myself that was immensely healing was doing what's called a self hold. Because the shitty thing with grief and losing someone is we lose that physical connection. But here's where hypnosis and the mind are really powerful. So, for anybody listening who hasn't explored this, I want to show you something incredibly weird but incredibly cathartic. If you're willing to play with me for a moment, you can actually lift the arm and position the hand under the armpit, bring it around, and create a really tight embrace. And if you sit in this embrace, what we're actually doing is we're activating not just the lymphatic system, but we are then doing a little bit of acupressure. And we're hitting the places that create security in the body. Now, if you take that hold and if you can safely play, you're welcome to close your eyes if you're not driving or doing something of importance. Take a couple of deep breaths there. Imagine your loved one holding you. That's something that I used to give clients who were in that position of grief. And we know as hypnotists, the brain can't tell the difference. So if you sit in it long enough and you try to recall what was the aroma, what was their smell, what was their body temperature, what did it feel like to be held? Your brain, your body, your physiology is going to create all of that for you. So on the really tough days, just a little tidbit for you to take home and play with. Bonnie, do you have any tools like that that you would offer someone who's listening today who's in the throes of grief?
I do EFT, and
Yeah.
there's a heart and soul sequence. It's called the heart and soul sequence. And it all begins with placing your hands over your heart and breathing. And you imagine your loved one there. And instead of starting from the crown chakra, you start from your third eye and you tap. And between positions, you place your hands over your heart and you breathe before moving on to your eyes, under your nose, under your chin, the collarbone area, each of those before moving into the next place, hold where you're going to be tapping, you breathe. All while keeping that imagery of your loved one. And I have found that that may seem like a little separation, but it actually builds the connection. So I do a little EFT with people who are coming to me for grief work. The other thing that I do, and this is pure hypnotherapy, is we're able to go in there and within our minds, we are able to feel the height of this person. We're able to feel their hands, and we're able to smell if they can smell. Some people, and I remember I had triplets come to see me. Triplets. This is years ago. These triplets, their mother passed away while giving birth to them. And they did not know the sound of their mother's voice. They didn't have any recordings of her. They only had pictures. So I had 3 individuals in my office, 2 identical twins that were girls and a boy. And, excuse me, I guided them back. The 3 of them had different experiences. One of them heard their voice. One of them heard the voice of their mother. And when we concluded the session, this young lady, she cried and she cried because all of her life, she wanted to hear her mother's voice saying the words, I love you. and she heard it. That's
Yeah.
something that no textbook, that is something that no one can provide, but that mom provided it. So that is something that as
Uh-oh.
hypnotherapists, we
It looks
can
like we've lost Bonnie. This is a
create
first.
that
I've never had this
environment.
happen before. I can't even pause. Let's see if I can bring Bonnie back. But if you're still here, whether you have me or whether you have Bonnie, let's see if we can rejoin here. And I hope that you're learning a different view, a different perspective of grief, of what grieving can look and be like, and that there are other opportunities, there are other ways to work through. I don't think Bonnie is able to come back. I don't know. As she's messaging furiously. Let me see if she can make it back. I think I'm still going. I don't know. Can you pop back in and let's see if we can hear the rest of Bonnie's brilliance and what she's got to share with us today. And if you're still listening, I'd love to hear what have your experiences with grief been? What have been some of the cathartic, more helpful things that have helped you through grieving and loss? Be sure to comment and we can always explore them later. And if you're still here, I appreciate you being incredibly patient as I try to get Bonnie back in to the studio here. Unfortunately, it's not letting Bonnie come back in. So I'm going to thank you for listening today. I will be providing all of Bonnie's information in a blog post so that you're able to connect with her if you're on a grief journey. Bonnie's an incredible practitioner, as you've been listening to. She's got a wealth of experience and education around helping people with grief. She does run grief groups. I want to say they were every second Monday. She does have these in person in her local area. I want to say she is in Louisiana. And also, there are virtual opportunities to explore grief with Bonnie as well. But if you would like to reach her, Bonnie, I want to say I don't have all of the information up. So what I will do is pop it in the description and in the notes when this episode comes out in full. And that way you can connect with Bonnie and explore either group work with her or having private sessions to work and heal beyond grief. But if you've been here, thank you so much for listening today. I can't wait to hear what you think. Be sure to drop a comment. And as always, stay happy, stay healthy, stay well. Most of all, stay inspired. Bye for now. Okay.